Okay, it's Todd again. Got my notes like always. Okay, now this one is about student loans, and I think it's financial slavery. I think over the last 40 years, they have tweaked it so much that it has become financial slavery. If you look at this graph that I had on the cover, you can see that over the last 90 days or last 30 days, delinquencies has been the highest ever been in history. Nothing like this have ever happened in history. I mean, delinquencies have skyrocketed, a straight vertical trajectory. The reason why this is because the White House administration has changed all the rules. They changed the rules because they need to bring in as much money as they can to help pay for all those tax cuts for all the billionaires and multimillionaires. The group that has the highest number of delinquencies are people over the age of 50. People do not realize that there are still over 2 million people over the age of 50 who are paying off their student loans. So if you're like millions of other people who feel like they'll never be able to pay off their student loans, as you can see from this graph, you are not alone. These people took out their student loans back in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, when the interest rates back then for student loans were around 8 to 9%. President Obama and his wife Michelle did not pay out their student loans until after he became president. So if you think you will never be able to pay off your student loans, a lot of people feel the same way. And from this graph, that seems to be pretty much true. Now the next part is very important. If you know anyone over the age of 50, you need to let them know this next part. Many people believe that if you're collecting Social Security retirement or Social Security disability, they cannot touch this money to pay off your student loans. This is not true. There's a loophole in the law that allows the government to go in to your checking account or your savings account and garnish all of the money from those bank accounts. Here's how the loophole works. If you're receiving Social Security disability or Social Security retirement, as long as that money goes into one account, like checking or savings, and nothing else goes into it, they cannot touch it. But if you pick up a penny or a dime off the street, or you sell something at a garage sale, or you transfer some money out of your another retirement account and put it into that account where your Social Security is going into, that now allows them to go into that bank account and garnish all of the money out of it. All right? One of the ways around this is that you can tell the person to get a debit card. The Social Security office will send them a debit card instead of direct depositing the money directly into their checking or savings account. Or else what they can also do is just change banks or change bank accounts. But that doesn't really work too much because they know what bank you're going to change to because that's where are going to direct deposit the money. Now the Trump administration, well, no administration in the past has ever done this because no administration in the past ever need to. But to pay for those tax cuts, the Trump administration may actually do this in the future. So that's just fair warning. Now, what makes your student loan so bad is something called compound interest. Now, I'm going to give you this extreme example, but it pretty much gives you a general idea about what compound interest can actually do. Okay, you have a student loan of $100, and you pay off like one lump payment of $30, and you think that you only owe $7, right? Or $70. But then you find out a few months later that you still owe $90. That's because compound interest. Compound interest allows them to charge you interest on your interest. And that's why it's very difficult to ever pay off your student loans. If you look at this graph, you can basically see that during the Biden administration, delinquencies was zero. Because the Biden administration and all the Democrats, or as liberals, are trying their best to give people some relief when it comes to student loans. But we haven't really been able to. What the Biden administration did was, during that particular 4-year time period, they did not report anything to the credit bureau regarding student loans. And what this did was, it allows people to get mortgages and buy homes, get lower interest rates on cars and personal loans. But now, the Trump administration has changed all of the rules because they need that money. other programs that was loan forgiveness programs or in, income contingency repayment programs. They changed the rules of all those programs. And that's why you see delinquencies spike up as a straight vertical trajectory. Because what the Trump administration did was they basically created a situation to where it would cause a lot of people to go into delinquency. Okay, now you probably think that maybe I can just file bankruptcy on your student loans. Yes, you can file bankruptcy on your student loans. But the problem is that people are going to tell you that you cannot for the following reasons. Filing bankruptcy on your student loans and getting them discharged for the majority of people, for most of us, is almost impossible. The law still exists that does allow you to file bankruptcy on your student loans. However, when I looked into it back in 2012, I was thinking about filing bankruptcy on my student loans. And I went through a whole bunch of court documents, a whole bunch of case law, a whole bunch of court rulings. Now, case law is really the same thing as a court ruling, all right? There's no difference. And I read like hundreds of cases for like 2 years before I even attempted to apply. Because I realized that when you go to court, it's one thing to tell the truth, but telling the truth is not going to win your case. When you go to court, you have to have a strategy and a tactic before you file your paperwork. So I looked over a whole bunch of court documents, read a lot of court opinions, case law, a lot of articles. And here's the impression that I received. If you are male, doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter if you're white, black, or brown, it doesn't matter if you have kids, it doesn't matter if you are disabled, the odds of you getting your student loans discharged or bankruptcy is pretty much zero. It's pretty much the same way if you are a black or brown woman with or without kids, or if you are disabled, it's still pretty much zero. However, if you are a white woman with children, you pretty much have a pretty good chance of getting your student loans discharged. So I'm serious. There was this one couple, they were white, they were married, he was working, she was working, they had 2 kids and a mortgage. They let her discharge her student loans. There was one black lady who was disabled, right? Been disabled for over 10 years. They would not let her discharge her student loans because they said she missed a couple payments in the past. And she was trying to tell them that she was disabled, she wasn't able to work, and she was trying to figure out the whole process. And that's why she missed the payments. There was another woman who was like 87 years old, got dementia, doesn't even know what time of day it is. And they still would not allow her to discharge her student loans. For all of these people, what they can also do is get something called a disability discharge. But they don't realize that one exists or how to go about doing it. A disability discharge is a one-page document that you fill out or your doctor fills out. And then you have a 3-year monitoring period. So for the 3 years, as long as you are disabled, after the 3-year monitoring period is over with, all your student loans is forgiven or they disappear. It's the same thing for veterans. If you're a veteran and you are disabled, it's pretty much the same process. But for a veteran, it's a lot easier. My ex-girlfriend, who's been on disability for the last 15 years, I told her about the disability discharge, get her student loans done, and she told me she tried it. But then I said, well, I'll help you out this time so you can get the documentation done. And she wouldn't even do it. And there's a lot of people like that. So if you know someone who's disabled, in some kind of way, or on Social Security or receiving Social Security disability, tell them to fill out that paperwork. It's a one-page document. They send it in, and they just have to make sure they stay disabled for the next 3 years, and the student loans are actually done. Now, the reason why I say that student loans are designed as to be financial slavery is because when they first started out, it wasn't this way. Back in the 80s and the 90s, even though the interest rates were about 8 to 9%, you could still file bankruptcy on your student loans. Back in the 80s and 90s, even if you had student loans, it didn't show up on your credit report. which means you can still get a mortgage, a lower interest rate on your car note, or even on credit cards and personal loans. Then in the late 90s, they changed the game. In the late 90s, they added in there that you cannot file, well, you can file bankruptcy, but they made the procedure so hard and so difficult that most people would not apply. Then during the Bush administration, they changed the game again. A lot of people who were going into the forgiveness programs like teachers forgiveness, income contingency repayment plans, even for a disability discharge. They were in these programs like 3 to 10 years. Then all of a sudden, when Bush administration came in, their paperwork got lost. And they would call up the student loan department and try to have it fixed, but they weren't able to get it fixed. And because of that, they got kicked off of those forgiveness programs and had to reapply. And what that meant was that they had to start all over again from the beginning. So a lot of those forgiveness programs say that if you own them for 20 years, no matter what's left in your student loans, it's going to automatically be forgiven. But if you have to reapply, then the clock starts over from day one, which means you're going to have another 20 years. Now, when Obama came in, he tried to fix that. But when Biden came in, he really fixed that. Biden said that for those monitoring periods, for like the disability monitoring period, they're going to take the information directly from the Social Security office. So you don't have to worry about sitting in your paperwork. As long as the Social Security office do not tell us that you are no longer disabled, we're going to assume that you are still disabled. For everybody else, what he did was, he said, okay, during the Bush administration, they kicked you off. You had to start all over again. What the Biden administration did was, he said, we're going to give you credit for all from the time you originally applied up to today. We're going to look at it as if you never got kicked off. And because he did that, now a lot of people are now able to become or get their student loans forgiven. And that was 100% legal. What the Trump administration did when they came in, they changed all the rules. They pretty much said that anyone who was on those forgiveness programs during the Biden administration has to reapply from day one. So even if you were had 10 years in or 19 years in, only had 1 more year to go before everything would be forgiven, the Trump administration said, no, you have to come in, start all over again from day one. I mean, the Trump administration, as you can see from the chart I've given you, everything they've done have skyrocketed delinquencies on student loans because they are trying to force people to pay that money because they need to pay for all the billionaires and multimillionaires' tax cuts. I hope this video helps, at least in some kind of way, because now you know you are not alone in the feeling that you will never be able to pay off your student loans because this is now what it is designed to undo. They keep you into financial slavery for the rest of your life. Now, a lot of you may not like us liberals, because I'm liberal, I'm a Democrat, and you may not like us for whatever reason. But if you look at the history of student loan and how it has progressed, it was always been as liberals or as Democrats who always tried to provide some type of relief. It's been the Republicans or the conservatives that always tried to keep you into some type of financial slavery. Okay, well, that's about it for this video. Adios.